All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. Hope everybody is doing well. Tomorrow, last day of the season, mates, here in Maryland for Piney Run Lake. Closes for the season middle of this week. They actually extended the season an extra month. It usually closes in late September, early October. They extended it to the end of November this year, so people would have an opportunity to catch some biggins. Not only largemouth bass, but also stripers. Piney Run has been known to produce 30 to 36 pound stripers as well. It's about 40 miles north of me, north of DC, in Carroll County, Maryland. It's a 300 acre, just under 300 acres, acre lake. So, put that on your radar, obviously, for the spring. I know a lot of mates have done really, really well there in the spring, during that time of year. There is a launch, so if you're taking your boat, just be aware. Always check on the Maryland, because they're all different. Always check on the parks in terms of which ones have a launch fee, which ones don't. Piney Run does have. It's anywhere from like $8 to $10, I think, if you're going to launch your boat. Obviously, trolling motor only, like most of these parks in central and western Maryland. But it's just going to be a really, really fun time. I mean, last day of the season, fall fishing. Normally don't get to fish that lake this late in the fall. They are biting. There have been reports of some 4 and 5 pounders already being taken in the last month at the lake. So that's obviously awesome. Like I've said before, and I preach all the time on a Facebook channel, JL Scott Fishing and Eats. Fall fishing, man, the big ones come out in the fall. It doesn't matter whether they're fishing the impoundment, the lake, the river. It just brings them out. Time to feed up. Now, something about, that's interesting for those, and the mates I'm joining tomorrow, is we had a discussion this morning on bait selection and what's really been working at some of the other lakes, regional park lakes, Little Seneca Lake, Clopper, a little further up west, Blair's Valley, things like that, that can be applied to Piney Run, and overall, it still remains a big jerkbait bite, mates. Like, and maybe it's a confidence bait, and I know for a lot of people it's not. And so people dismiss it and they go with the jig. I'm a huge hair jig and jig guy throughout most of the year, especially during the summer when most people are laying off the jig, because they think the water's too hot or whatever. But if the smallies are aligning to the bottom, they're feeding on crayfish, I go with the jig. And I know a lot of people prefer to pull them up and throw the chatterbait and throw all that stuff, or throw top water. I mean, that's fine too. But it's really about locating your fish. But I'm going to go with the jerkbait, primarily in the crankbait. That's kind of like where my mindset is. And keep in mind, when you're talking about Maryland and Virginia to some extent, and I had a couple messages for some mates about doing some of the other breakdowns. I did Lake Brittle. I'll do that again. Maybe Burke Lake and Hunting Run and a couple other ones here in the off season for a lot of people to dial that stuff up in terms of what's being stocked in them to prepare you for next season. Okay, because here's the reality. Most of these lakes in Maryland are stocked with rainbow trout, okay, or some form of. Brown trout, for the most part, go to the creeks. Rainbow trout, goldens are going to the reservoirs and the lakes, okay? So there is, you have it. In the last year, Piney Run has been stocked with about 2,500 trout, okay, for anywhere from late last year all the way up until just this last October. So in October, on the 13th, they stocked about 400 rainbow trout and golden trout into Piney Run. So that can help you a little bit. So for me, I'm going through my jerkbaits and my crankbaits. I'm going to look for some patterns that I know have been effective on other impoundments and other lakes, like say Jennings Randolph, that has a very significant trout population that the other species are going to feed on. And so I'm going to go with 2 different rainbow pattern jerk baits, okay, to start out with. Okay, turn that around. So I've got one a lot more greener on the top, okay, that shimmers in the water, that creates a little bit more flash than your normal rainbow trout, okay? And so, really, really love this one in the Western Maryland impoundments and reservoirs and lakes, okay? Because this is primarily what it gets stocked with, okay, by the state. And they've got significant populations that come in from the creeks as well and come into those areas, okay? So that's a really, really great. This one's a little bit deeper diver. And then this one, you'll see, has a little bit different coloration pattern to it. A little bit different sheen, shine in the water for that bite. And so that's what I'm going to concentrate on. Now, I'm going to match these colors to my crankbait. Now, the crankbait that I've had success on in the last few weeks on the lakes, Montgomery County, Carroll County, Howard County, Garrett County, Washington County, Allegheny County, okay, is kind of a mixture between what you would normally think of like in the river or shad pattern with trout pattern. And this is what it looks like. So it's got the same kind of colors in the water that the trout reflect on, okay? Depending on what kind of day you're having. Obviously, that's a square bill crankbait. This is the pattern I'm looking at. I'll also take with me the same blank that's in a more of a blue, silver, and black with some gold to it. That'll do really, really well in the water. Obviously, this also, we're going to go with, it's late fall, we're going to go with a little bit subtler noise, not so much the loud rattle, okay, that you want maybe in the summertime, okay? They're slowing down their metabolism. They're slowing down as well. So a lot of things change a little bit behavior-wise. So really like that rattle. Okay, so the next set of jerkbaits that I'm going to take are what was covered. If you checked out Willamette Weapon Lures' Cyber Monday and Black Friday sale live event or live stream, Brian was talking about these baits that we had talked about it and he custom did for me because of what I was seeing here in Virginia and Maryland in terms of watching fish follow but not commit, right? For some reason, they were committing on some of my other more branded type colorations, but not my custom, and so we got together, we had a conversation about it, and so originally what I had that I love in the coloration that really, really enticed, but did not get them to commit as much. And what I mean by that is, I still caught fish on this jerkbait, mates, but more and more fish were following it and then and then not committing. Okay, and that's where I want to narrow that gap down, because if you can get them to follow, okay, then your next step that you want to do in the process is analyze, okay, why did they not commit to a strike? Okay, and so this was the jerkbait. All right. So it's a purple sculpin pattern, okay? Very dark with the purple, and it has a little subtle like yellowish hinge to it, and then a white bottom, right? Okay? And so my thought process was based on other experiences I've had over the years with some other baits, it was the belly. It was the belly, okay? Because remember, they're coming up, okay? They're looking at and moving up and then laterally, right? And so what we did is we basically did the top the same, and Brian changed up the bottom. Okay, so everything is pretty much the same, only extended that yellow to chartreuse, okay, along the bottom of the bait. And it changed everything. Not only did it change everything, as I communicated in that live stream to Brian in the lakes, which was my expectation, but it also is starting now to land smallies in the river during the fall. So we will see what happens in the spring. With that subtle change, just one little subtle change. These are the exact same in terms of depth, okay? In terms of everything about these baits. It's just that the bottom coloration is different. Okay, hooks are the same, everything action's the same, and now getting strikes because of that chartreuse bottom. But when you get onto something like that, mates, and this is what we're going to find out tomorrow at Piney Run, okay? Not only did Brian paint me one with the diver, he also, because he knows how I like to fish, is he got me one. Same exact pattern, a little smaller, okay? Whereas I can play a little bit more the twitch game, you know, a little closer to the surface, okay, for when they want to come up. Now, the reason why this one actually may come into play a little bit more tomorrow, and really for the next 2 weeks into this, really into early December, weather is going to be in the 40s to 50s, okay, you know, but it's water level, mates. A lot of these lakes are down, and some of them, like Blair's Valley, are down substantially. Up towards Garrett and Washington County, Allegheny, up in western Maryland, places like Savage, okay, they're down, okay, substantially in terms of water levels, okay? And so that's a big reason why you want to make sure that when you have the colors that work for you, okay, that you want to make sure that you be able to cover the depths that those bass may be suspended at, okay? Or if they're feeding up, they're feeding up. And so you've got that to play, but then you can also use your crankbaits as more of your search baits, okay? In terms of trying to, if you don't have, you know, if you don't have graph, you don't have live scope, you don't have that kind of stuff, you know, the other interesting thing, I will tell you this, that I've discovered myself in terms of a paradigm shift of my mentality, okay, is as an angler, you always want to evolve, okay? We're stubborn, you know, we are stubborn about baits and about techniques, sometimes to a fault. I am not a big live scope guy, okay? I've been on the fence, and it's not an affordability thing. I don't care about that. That's not an issue for me. Okay. It's just, you know, on the river, I've never really felt the need for it, and I fish primarily 80% on the river. But during this time of year, when I'm transitioning to lakes and reservoirs and impoundments, really, deeper water and things like that, I'm not fishing in 3 feet or less water, running back through cuts and narrows. You guys seen the videos on the Potomac and places like that. My mind shift is kind of changing a little bit because I'm getting a little more opportunities to fish with some people that are utilizing that technology. Okay, and I will say this: it can be a lot of fun, especially if you're taking a kid fishing and you want to go crappie fishing. Like, I mean, you can get on some fish, and you know, I'm not talking about, tournament angling. That's just not my thing. I don't want to be looking at a lot. Me, personally, I don't want to be looking at a live scope an hour and a half to 2 hours to 3 hours, you know what I'm saying, to catch two fish, like, to like, you know, to like get in there and break down this and break down where the, you know, that's just not me and how I fish. I just want to catch fish. I'm not looking at breaking down because it's not tournament angling mindset for me. But I understand that mindset for people. And then for the most part, I'll co-angle more than, you know, entering tournaments like BFL and stuff like that, with a boat. And so I'm not looking at that live scope anyway. So I've got a co-angle from the back of the boat, right? And some guys have stuff on the back of the boat. That's pretty cool. For the most part, most of the guys don't. Okay. So again, it's understand, utilize, you know, your weak strengths in terms of how you're going to be fishing when you're going into these events, especially if you're going to be fishing from the back of the boat. You know, always learn from your boater if he's actually using the live scope in terms of maybe you could pick up tips, maybe you could pick up all that before you get your boat and before you get sponsored or you get whatever down the line in order to utilize that. Or maybe you've got your own boat. There are a lot of guys who co-angle that are co's on a lot of trails that have their own boats. They just don't enter the tournaments as boaters yet. But so it's an opportunity, unless some of the series do away with co's, which is the potential in a couple years. You know, and so from live scope perspective, you can go out and get, you get in crappie on some of these reservoirs, some of these lakes. I mean, you can get on 30, 40, 50 crappie, and you're just catching fish left and right, like you're right on them, right? And that is fun. So so it's like if you're taking a kid, you're taking a veteran, you're taking somebody out, a coworker, you're taking someone out, or taking someone on their first fishing trip to get them hooked on fishing. To me, that's where that technology is great, because you can find fish pretty quickly, get on them in these lakes. Especially a lot of these places are less than 100 acres. It's not like you're being, it's not Gunnersville, it's not Chickamauga, it's not the Upper Bay. Okay, it's not, they're very, very, compact, 54 acres, to basically 125, and you got a couple that are 300 or less before you get into the big reservoirs. So it's a great opportunity to get out there. So I'm kind of coming back a little bit on my mentality and my mindset on live scope. I'm not really sure I'll utilize it. I might for next fall and next winter, based on what I'm experiencing here. I got 4 lakes lined up here in the next week and a half, all in Maryland, Centric, and Western Maryland because of the bite. The smallie bite is always killer in early December up in Western Maryland, and then in Central Maryland, obviously in North, in parts of Central Virginia as well. You just catch a lot of big fish. You don't catch the quantity, but you do catch big fish in that 3 to 5 pound range. But make sure you check and make sure that those lakes are open. Again, Piney Run will close end of November, okay, for the season, and will not open back up, for boating and kayaking, canoeing, and all that stuff. I think early spring. I think you may still be able to fish there, but the gates get locked. You'd have to get in. Probably have to walk in. Double check on that. I know a couple places are like that where you can still shoreline fish during the wintertime, but you can't take any boats out. You can't do any of that. So that's just a quick video. I'm doing a pack out right now for tomorrow. Piney Run on the schedule. Hopefully we're gonna get some good shots. We'll have some fun. Maybe get into some stripers. Who knows? That's just the reality of what can happen in the wintertime in these multi-species lakes. But again, like I said, I'm really going to concentrate on throwing my rainbow pattern jerkbaits because of the stocking that's been going on throughout the year on this lake. Again, it's 298 acres. I kind of got the breakdown of pretty much the habitat, and it's got a lot of hydrilla in sections of the lake that we'll probably look at and take a look at. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to switch over and throw the purple sculpin a little bit, and then we'll throw in some other crankbaits. Like I said, just have a little bit of fun. We're going to be out for a couple hours, and I'll give everybody an update on the Facebook page on how that goes at Piney Run Lake in Carroll County, Maryland. Last day of the season for 2022. All right, mates.